The World Economic Forum is helping the United Nations become a one world government. And will it be the one world government of Mystery Babylon, the one described in the book of Revelation, the one that takes power before the Antichrist and sets everything up for his rule? Are the pieces finally falling into place for the final apocalypse? That's what we're talking about today, an extremely important topic, and we're starting right now. But before we look at whether or not the global system embodied in the UN is Mystery Babylon, let's look at the plans currently underway to create a one world government. No one has to tell us that world events have been crazy during the last 2 years, unlike anything I have seen in my lifetime, and I'm sure you feel the same way. In a previous video, we discussed how the United Nations, the global billionaires, and groups like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Rockefeller Foundation, and especially the World Economic Forum, are conspiring together to eliminate the current system of governance by nation states such as the United States, Great Britain, Australia, Canada, etc., wherever you live, with a system controlled by what they term stakeholders, in combination with the United Nations. Until just recently, this plan was disguised and hidden, but now they're right out in the open with this plan. Here is a direct quote from World Economic Forum President Klaus Schwab from his book, Global Redesign, about their intentions. Quote, "A globalized world is best imagined by a coalition of multinational corporations, governments, including through the UN system, and select civil society organizations. It argues that governments are no longer the overwhelmingly dominant actors on the world stage, and that the time has come for a new stakeholder paradigm of international governance." So, in his fancy words, Klaus and the United Nations are very upfront about their plan to take power away from individual nations and concentrate the power in the hands of the UN, big corporations, and what they call stakeholders, who are likely globalists and elites like Bill Gates. How do you feel about having your lives controlled by these people? No matter how you feel, the Bible tells us something just like this is coming. And while we're on this subject, where are the politicians decrying this type of an approach? Where are people like Senator Cotton, who seems in the United States to be such a conservative? Why isn't he speaking out against the World Economic Forum? Why aren't other politicians, and think of your favorite politician in your nation, why aren't they speaking out against this? My answer is that I think they're in on it. Now, the Transnational Institute, TNI, is an international think tank, and it sums up the forum's work this way. The forum is hence planning to replace a recognized democratic model, and that would be our current nation states like the USA, Canada, etc., with a model where a self-selected group of stakeholders like Bill Gates make the decisions on behalf of the people. Think tank believes gatherings such as Davos are, quote, a silent global coup d'etat, end of quote, to capture governance. There are those who claim these groups have possibly influenced the COVID-19 pandemic. Whether or not that's true, these groups are at the very least taking advantage of it to further their world takeover with a great reset. Schwab's book on this topic says the following. COVID-19, The Great Reset, that happens to be the title of this other book of his, is a guide for anyone who wants to understand how COVID-19 disrupted our social and economic systems and what changes will be needed to create a more inclusive, resilient, and sustainable world going forward. Their plans are to reset the world governments, economies, and social structures, with them in charge of the results, of course. So no one can doubt that the United Nations and globalist billionaires are hard at work to take over the world. The events we see, the outcome of elections, the pandemic, everything is pointing in this direction. Now let's begin to look at how the world global system might fit in with the description of Mystery Babylon found in the Bible. And this has enormous prophetic importance because we are instructed to, quote, come out of her, my people, end of quote. We need to know what Mystery Babylon is, and we need to know how to come out of it. We're exploring those topics in this video. First, before we dig into what the Bible says, a few shout-outs are in order. 3 members of our board of advisors and I have spent a lot of time on this subject. Fisherman, Michael Tarrant, and especially Britt Ashley, who personally has spent years researching Mystery Babylon. Britt did all the heavy lifting on this topic. Now, let's look at the primary verses. The first aspect to consider is that Mystery Babylon is not the beast. In fact, at first, Mystery Babylon controls the beast. But later, the beast turns the tables and destroys Mystery Babylon. Let's look at the control aspect. I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, full of blasphemous names, having 7 heads and 10 horns. The harlot, or Mystery Babylon, sits on the beast initially. It controls the beast. This is just like Mystery Babylon sitting on many waters. And we learn the waters which you saw where the prostitute sits are peoples and multitudes and nations and languages. So Mystery Babylon has multinational power, and it controls the beast initially through this multinational power. When this happens, 99% of Christians may think this new world order of Mystery Babylon is the beast. I fully expect that to be the overwhelming opinion of most Christians. But it isn't. The beast comes second. But the world economic, political, and likely religious system that is Mystery Babylon will look like the beast to most Christians based on books like Left Behind and Late Great Planet Earth. These eschatologic books have influenced people to look for a European-based government run by Westerners. And that's what it appears Mystery Babylon will be. But it isn't the final empire. Let's make that clear. In fact, we're told in Revelation 17, 9 through 10, that she sits on the beast. The beast has 7 historic heads, but not necessarily the 8th head. That final head, which is the final beast, empire, isn't included. So Mystery Babylon sits on the beast, but not the final beast. Because, like we said, the beast later destroys Mystery Babylon. And the 10 horns which you saw and the beast, these will hate the prostitute and will make her desolate and naked and will eat her flesh and burn her up with fire. So it's key to realize that a world-dominating force, Mystery Babylon, exists prior to the Antichrist empire. And the Antichrist and his empire are originally dominated by this force. Then, eventually, the beast is going to destroy it. This whole concept is very poorly understood. Now, Mystery Babylon is named Babylon because of its similarity to the original Babylon of the Tower of Babel fame. Nimrod's empire, you know the one. That empire was the original one-world government with all people under its control. It was prideful, and it existed in opposition to the will of God. Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top will reach into heaven, and let's make a name for ourselves, as opposed to glorifying God. Otherwise, we will be scattered abroad over the face of the earth. And this, of course, is in opposition to God's original command to Adam and Noah to fill the earth. Now the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the men had built. And the Lord said, Behold, they are one people, and they will have the same language. And this is what they have started to do, and now nothing which they plan to do will be impossible for them. This final statement seems to indicate that their technology would increase so man could do anything he wanted. It was right after this that God separated the nations by language and regional borders, as per Deuteronomy 32:8. So God's will was the division of nation states. How does this match the UN and its Agenda 2030? Well, rather than being a collection of diverse nations, the UN is planning to control the world with a limited number of stakeholders or billionaires in charge. So this fits into the Babylon symbology perfectly. Then, of course, the Babylon of Nebuchadnezzar can also be considered symbolic as well. It was remembered by the Hebrew people as a power that had invaded their land, that had reduced its capital and temple to ruins, that had destroyed the independence of their country, and that had carried away the inhabitants into a long captivity. It became, therefore, the symbol of all that was haughty and oppressive, and especially of all that persecuted the Church of God. This is what we expect from the coming totalitarian, United Nations-led government who subjects all the nations. And sure enough, in Revelation, we read that Babylon reigns over the kings of the earth. The woman whom you saw is the great city, which reigns over the kings of the earth. The kings still exist, but Babylon controls them. However, a lot of people look at this verse and say, hey, wait a minute. Didn't you notice that Babylon is a city? So how can it be a worldwide organization like the UN? How can it be a city and a worldwide organization? You might be saying, hey, Nelson, isn't Mystery Babylon Rome or New York or Mecca or the new city of Neom or even Jerusalem? After all, it's a city. Actually, the Bible says it is a great city ruling over the kings of the earth. What very few have considered is that the term great city might have meant something completely different than what we call a city back in the days the Bible was written. Let me say that again, because it's a new thought that many have probably not considered. The term great city may not mean an individual city. Let's look at the first use of this term, great city, in the Bible. According to the law of primacy, the first use of a term or symbol is what it means throughout the rest of Scripture. And great city is found in Genesis. And guess where? In regard to Nimrod's empire. If that isn't a perfect match with Revelation, I don't know what is. So let's look at what it says. And the beginning of this kingdom was Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. From that land he went to Assyria and built Nineveh, Rehoboth-ir, Calah, and Rezin between Nineveh and Calah. That is the great city. Moses lists out 8 cities that were the main cities in Nimrod's empire and stretched over 2 countries, Babylon and Assyria, and in combination, they were called the Great City. So Great City appears to be a network of cities or city-states, as they were in those days, exactly what the UN is planning today, a network of nations. Here is another reference to Great City from the book of Revelation. And their dead bodies will lie on the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also their Lord was crucified. This verse refers to the 2 witnesses and says their bodies will lie in the great city, which John compares to Sodom, which was a city-state, and Egypt, which was an empire, and says the great city is spiritually or mystically like these nations. To which everyone will say, hey, wait a minute, this is referring to Jerusalem. Jesus was crucified in Jerusalem after all, wasn't he? Well, no, he wasn't. Actually, he was crucified outside the camp, outside of Jerusalem. As Hebrews tells us, for the bodies of those animals whose blood is brought into the holy place by the high priest as an offering for sins are burned outside the camp. Therefore, Jesus also suffered outside the gate, that he might sanctify the people through his own blood. So the great city can be what is outside of Jerusalem. Now, we are not adamant about this. However, this scripture shows Revelation 11 doesn't necessarily indicate it is Jerusalem. Could be, but there are several possibilities for the capital of Mystery Babylon. Mystery Babylon can be centered within a single city. After all, it will have a capital. New York is the capital city, so to speak, of the United Nations right now. But it doesn't have to remain so. And Jerusalem will become the capital city of the Antichrist at some point. And the new mega smart city, Neom, in Saudi Arabia, is also a possibility. So all of these are candidate cities to be the capital of the great city. Just like Babel was the capital of the great city of Nimrod's kingdom. Because we are not yet living in that future time, we don't know yet what the future organization of the United Nations will be once it takes power. It is something to watch for. Any of these cities are candidates. We'll return to this in just a little bit. The next thing to consider is how Mystery Babylon is both a spiritual entity, a political entity, and an economic entity all at the same time. In terms of the political aspect, it controls the kings of the earth, and its merchants become the powerful people of the earth. And this sounds exactly like what the World Economic Forum is planning for the UN and its stakeholders, its stakeholder model. Are these merchants and great ones people like Gates and Zuckerberg? Let's look at what the Bible says about these merchants. The kings of the earth committed adultery with her, meaning Mystery Babylon, and the merchants of the earth grew rich from her excessive luxuries. And the Greek here is dynameos to straionos. Your merchants were the powerful people of the earth. Again, talking about these same merchants, these same guys, because all the nations were deceived by your sorcery, and the word here is a familiar and scary term, Pharmakeia. So these two verses describe the merchants. Our English translations miss some of the supernatural aspects of these verses, and that's why we've included the Greek terms. Prior to Revelation 18:3, we learn who is providing the merchants with the luxuries or power. She has become a dwelling place of demons, and a prison of every unclean spirit, and a prison of every unclean and hateful bird. Are these the fallen angels cast down with Satan at the midpoint, in combination with demons? Likely, they are. And in the term translated excessive luxuries, we see the demonic aspect. The actual terms are dynameos tau stranos. Dynameos is a word denoting power, especially supernatural power. This word is used over 100 times in the New Testament. It's not an uncommon word. And mostly, it's used in terms of the power of God or the resurrection power of Jesus. But in 2 Thessalonians 2:9, this word is used for demonic power, the one whose coming is in accord with the activity of Satan with all dynameus power and false signs and wonders. Stranos is best described as a strong desire. So the demonic power of strong desire leads to the wealth of the merchants. What could this be? The materialism of the people of the world. is a demonic, empowered desire. Materialism may be what's in view here. That's why the exact meaning of the words is so important to understand. Pharmakeia should strike a chord with the current world events that we're watching. It is the Greek word from which we get our English word pharmacy and pharmaceuticals. And this term also carries the idea of sorcery. Again, a demonic empowering through drugs. This might indicate illegal drugs, possibly like narcotics, or legal vaccines. The verse says the merchants became the powerful people because of these drugs. So putting two and two together, it seems to say that the merchants rise to power because of demonically empowered drugs. It is entirely possible that what we are seeing right now with the mandated requirement for vaccines and the vaccine passports that will enforce them could well be what this verse is saying. And this pharmaceutical sorcery is one of the reasons Mystery Babylon is judged. It is a very serious issue in the Bible. The nations also fall because all the nations have fallen because of the wine of the passion of her sexual immorality. And the kings of the earth have committed acts of sexual immorality with her. All right, what's this sexual immorality? It is the reason Mystery Babylon is called a harlot or prostitute. And Mystery Babylon is first and primarily a prostitute. What is a prostitute in the Bible? It is a woman who sells her sexual favors for money. Sexual immorality is usually a symbol in the Bible for idolatry. So it is an idolatrous entity, and it sells this idolatry for money. It is an economic entity, and it is called the great prostitute. The Greek word for great means widespread. So it is a big, idolatrous economic entity. In Jeremiah, we learn about this same wine of immorality making the nations drunk and mad. Babylon was a gold cup in the hand of the Lord, making the whole earth drunk. The nations drank her wine, therefore the nations have gone mad. So what is this wine? Probably the deception of a false worship of either mankind and science, or demonic fallen angels like Allah of Islam. Mystery Babylon is going to make the whole world drunk on this Kool-Aid. Will climate change, LGBTQ, racial justice, etc. be part of the Kool-Aid? Possibly. The way Babylon is dressed gives us a hint about this aspect as well. The woman was clothed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, holding in her hand a gold cup, there's that gold cup again, full of the abominations of the unclean things of her sexual immorality. Because Catholic priests and cardinals were scarlet and purple, a lot of those reading this think Babylon is the Catholic Church. And they focus on this aspect. What they miss is that this is a nearly direct quote from Exodus that has nothing to do with the Catholic Church. You shall make a breastpiece of judgment, the work of a skilled embroiderer. Like the work of the ephod you shall make it, of gold, of violet, purple, and scarlet material, and fine twisted linen you shall make it. It shall be square and folded double, a span in length and a span in width, and you shall mount on it 4 rows of stones. So Revelation 17 is referring to the ephod of the high priest of Israel that had linen, scarlet, and purple and precious stones. The high priest would act as an intermediary between God and man, providing forgiveness of sins. So this is saying Mystery Babylon tries to act in a satanic version of this as well. An intermediary between Satan and man by idolizing the works of his hands. This may also refer to the blasphemous sacrifices taking place on the Temple Mount as well. This is a debatable point, exactly what this means. But idolatry, trying to make itself look like the real religion, is what this is saying. Which brings us to the idea of the coming out of Mystery Babylon, because it is a worldwide government. Physically, coming out of her is mostly impossible. But coming out of her sins and her philosophies is very possible. Look at what this verse about coming out actually says. Come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins, so that you will not receive any of her plagues, for her sins are piled up to heaven, and God has remembered her crimes. Notice, it's so that we won't share in her sins. So in our opinion, it is not physically leaving Babylon. Christians won't physically leave Babylon until the rapture. From our best interpretation, Babylon is destroyed right before the rapture. The second of three angels announces the fall of Babylon in Revelation 14:8, right before Jesus harvests the earth. So all true believers will physically exit Babylon, but it might be via the rapture. But there are also questions about what aspect of Babylon that the beast and the 10 kings destroy. If we are right about Babylon being the United Nations and a world government, they can't destroy the whole thing, as that would be most of the entire world. Most likely, it's the capital city and the government. As we discussed, the three most likely possibilities are New York, Neom, and Jerusalem. So another aspect to come out of is out of the capital. Once the UN assumes control, which city that will become clear. And Christians probably need to leave whatever city that is as well. Now, if the UN is Mystery Babylon, what is the beast empire then that Mystery Babylon originally dominates? Click right here to keep watching and discover where the Antichrist arises and the empire that he comes out of. Till then, this is Nelson, and I'll see you there.